My name is Miguel Vasquez, and I come from the vibrant streets of Mexico City to the soulful, jazz-infused avenues of New Orleans. History has always been my passion, a fascination that led me to a quieter life as a history teacher at a local community college. Yet, despite my love for the past, I never imagined I would find myself entangled in a web of deceit, murder, and mystery that felt like it was ripped from the pages of a novel. This story began with an unexpected invitation to one of John Dupont's legendary masquerade balls, an event that promised a night of enchantment and mystery. Little did I know that it would also mark the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything I thought I knew about human nature, justice, and truth. At the heart of this tale is my dear friend, Elliot Brooks, a private detective whose keen intuition and sharp mind have made him a legend in his own right. Our paths had crossed many times, and together, we had faced numerous challenges. But nothing could have prepared us for the dark and twisted path we were about to walk. The events that unfolded at Dupont's masquerade set off a chain reaction that revealed the depths of corruption and manipulation that had infiltrated the very fabric of our city. As we navigated the treacherous landscape of old money, hidden agendas, and deadly secrets, we uncovered truths that were both shocking and heartbreaking. This story is not just a tale of murder and mystery. It is a journey into the human soul, a dance between light and shadow, truth and deception. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the unbreakable bond of friendship that guided us through the darkest of times. Join me as we delve into the world of the Deadly Masquerade, a story that will take you on a thrilling ride through the labyrinthine streets of New Orleans, uncovering secrets and seeking justice. It is a journey that will test your resolve, challenge your perceptions, and ultimately, leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. The summer of 1961 was a particularly memorable one, steeped in the rich cultural ambience of New Orleans. The air, thick with humidity, carried the sounds of jazz, laughter, and the whispers of countless secrets. It was during this vibrant season that I received an unexpected invitation, one that would set in motion a series of events that none of us could have foreseen. I had always been drawn to the history and mystique of New Orleans, which is why I chose to make it my home after leaving Mexico. The city, with its blend of cultures and traditions, provided a fertile ground for my passion as a history teacher. Little did I know that my life would soon take a turn into the realm of intrigue and danger, thanks to a single piece of mail. The invitation arrived in an ornate envelope, its seal embossed with the emblem of John Dupont, a man whose reputation for opulent parties was well known throughout the city. The invitation was for a grand masquerade ball, an event that promised a night of enchantment and mystery. It was an offer I found difficult to resist, especially knowing that my dear friend Elliot Brooks, a private detective with a sharp mind and keen intuition, would be an ideal companion for such an evening. With a sense of anticipation, I called Elliot. His voice crackled through the receiver, ever calm and composed. "Miguel, what brings you to the phone on this fine evening?" he inquired. "You won't believe it, Elliot," I replied, excitement lacing my words. "I've received an invitation to John Dupont's masquerade ball. What do you say we attend together?" There was a brief pause before he responded, his curiosity evidently piqued. "A masquerade, you say? It sounds like an opportunity to observe and perhaps uncover a few secrets. Count me in." As the night of the masquerade approached, the city buzzed with anticipation. Elliot and I prepared meticulously, choosing our masks with care. I selected a mask adorned with intricate gold filigree, while Elliot opted for a sleek black mask that complemented his sharp suit. With our identities concealed, we set off for the Dupont mansion, eager to immerse ourselves in the evening's festivities. The Dupont mansion was a sight to behold, its grand facade illuminated by the warm glow of lanterns. Guests arrived in a procession of elegant cars, their masks adding an element of mystery to the already enchanting scene. The air was thick with the scent of blooming flowers, and the sound of laughter and music filled the night. As we stepped through the ornate doors of the mansion, we were greeted by a ballroom that seemed to have been plucked from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting shimmering light on the masked guests who mingled and danced. The walls were adorned with opulent tapestries depicting scenes from myth and legend, adding to the sense of magic that permeated the room. Elliot, ever the keen observer, surveyed the scene with a discerning eye. It's impressive, I'll give Dupont that. But there's something about this place. Something that feels off. I couldn't help but smile at his perpetual suspicion. You're always so cautious, Elliot. Can't we just enjoy the evening? He returned my smile, albeit with a hint of seriousness. Of course, but it's always wise to stay vigilant. The night unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance, each guest playing their part in the elaborate masquerade. We mingled with the crowd, engaging in conversations that revealed snippets of the lives and secrets of the city's elite. The music grew louder, the laughter more boisterous, and the atmosphere charged with excitement. Yet, amidst the revelry, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. It was as if an unseen presence lurked in the shadows, observing our every move. I shared my unease with Elliot, who nodded thoughtfully. I felt it too, he admitted. There's something going on here, something beneath the surface. Our suspicions were soon confirmed when a masked figure approached us, slipping a note into Elliot's hand before disappearing into the crowd. Elliot unfolded the note, his brow furrowing as he read the cryptic message. Meet me in the garden. Midnight. Concern mingled with curiosity as I glanced at Elliot. Do you think it's a trap? He shook his head, determination in his eyes. I don't know, but we're not going to find out by staying here. Let's see what this is all about. As the clock neared midnight, we made our way to the garden, our steps silent on the cobblestone path. The garden was a labyrinth of hedges and topiaries, the moonlight casting eerie shadows that danced with the wind. We navigated the twists and turns, our senses heightened as we approached the designated meeting spot. To our shock, we found John Dupont himself, slumped against a marble bench, his body lifeless and hidden among the topiary. The mask he wore still concealed his face, but the gruesome reality of his murder was all too clear. Blood stained the front of his suit, and the glint of a jeweled dagger protruded from his chest. Elliot knelt beside the body, his keen eyes assessing the scene. He's been dead for at least an hour. Whoever did this wanted to ensure he wouldn't survive. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of the situation. But who would want to kill Dupont? And why leave us a note? Elliot's expression was grim. I don't know, but we need to find out. We have a murder on our hands, and it's up to us to uncover the truth. Our investigation began in earnest as we retraced our steps, questioning the guests and searching for any clues that might lead us to the killer. The masked faces that had once seemed so innocent now took on a more sinister aspect, each one a potential suspect in the gruesome crime. Elliot's reputation as a detective garnered him the cooperation of the authorities, and soon the police arrived to secure the scene and gather evidence. Detective Marshall, a grizzled veteran of the force, recognized Elliot immediately. Brooks, I didn't expect to see you here, Marshall said, his voice a mix of respect and curiosity. I could use your help with this one. Elliot nodded, his expression serious. We'll do whatever we can, Marshall. Dupont's murder is just the beginning. I have a feeling there's more to this than meets the eye. We worked tirelessly through the night, our investigation leading us to a series of startling revelations. We uncovered a tangled web of secrets and lies, each thread pulling us deeper into the mystery. From jealous business rivals to spurned lovers, the list of suspects grew longer with each passing hour. One guest, a woman named Celeste, stood out among the rest. Her nervous demeanor and evasive answers drew Elliot's attention, and he questioned her with a keen intensity. Celeste, you knew Dupont well, didn't you? Elliot asked, his eyes searching her face for any sign of deceit. She hesitated before nodding. Yes, we were close, but I swear, I didn't do this. Elliot's intuition told him there was more to her story, but for now, he had to focus on gathering as much information as possible. The truth was out there, hidden among the masks and shadows of the masquerade. As the dawn broke over the city, we stood in the garden, the weight of our discovery heavy on our shoulders. Dupont's murder had set off a chain of events that would change our lives forever, and we knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger and deception. But we were ready. Together, we would unmask the truth and bring the killer to justice, no matter the cost. The masquerade had just begun, and the dance between light and shadow was far from over. The night that had begun with the promise of enchantment had ended in tragedy. But for Elliot and me, it was only the beginning of a journey that would test our resolve and challenge our perceptions of truth and justice. As we left the Dupont mansion, we knew that our lives would never be the same. The invitation to the masquerade had been more than just a golden ticket. It had been a call to adventure, to uncover the mysteries that lay hidden beneath the surface. And we were ready to answer that call, no matter where it might lead. The dawn light filtered through the heavy drapes of my modest apartment, casting long shadows that seemed to dance and shift with a life of their own. The events of the previous night at the Dupont mansion weighed heavily on my mind. John Dupont's lifeless body, the masked faces, the cryptic note, each detail played over and over, a puzzle begging to be solved. I knew that Elliot and I had a long and arduous journey ahead of us. I was sipping my morning coffee when the phone rang, the shrill sound cutting through the silence. It was Elliot. His voice, though calm, carried an urgency that made me sit up straight. "Miguel, we need to talk. Meet me at the precinct in 20 minutes. I quickly gathered my things and headed out, the warm summer air a stark contrast to the chill that had settled in my bones. The precinct was a bustling hive of activity when I arrived. Police officers moved with purpose, their expressions grim and focused. Elliot was waiting for me, his sharp eyes scanning the room as if searching for hidden truths. "Morning, Elliot," I greeted him. He nodded, his gaze never wavering. "Morning, Miguel. I've been going over the evidence we collected last night. There's something you need to see." He led me to a small room where Detective Marshall and a few other officers were gathered. On the table before us lay a collection of items: Dupont's mask, the dagger that had ended his life, and several photographs. Each item told a part of the story, and it was up to us to piece it together. Marshall, a seasoned detective with a stern demeanor, addressed the room. "We've got our work cut out for us, gentlemen. Dupont was a powerful man with many enemies. This isn't going to be easy." Elliot picked up one of the photographs, his expression thoughtful. "This was taken at the ball just a few hours before Dupont was found. Look at the people around him. Each one had a motive, a reason to see him dead." I studied the photograph, recognizing several of the masked faces from the night before. There was Jonathan Pierce, a rival businessman with a grudge; Claire Morgan, a former lover whose heart Dupont had broken; and Celeste, the woman who had seemed so nervous during our questioning. "Celeste," I said aloud, drawing the attention of the room. "She knew Dupont well. We need to talk to her again." Marshall nodded. "Agreed. We'll bring her in for further questioning. In the meantime, we need to dig deeper into Dupont's life. His business dealings, his personal relationships, anything that might give us a clue." As the day wore on, Elliot and I immersed ourselves in the investigation. We pored over documents, interviewed witnesses, and followed every lead, no matter how insignificant it seemed. The more we uncovered, the more complex the web of secrets and lies became. It was during one of these interviews that we learned about Dupont's involvement in a lucrative but illegal arms deal. He had been using his wealth and influence to broker weapons to the highest bidder, a revelation that added a new layer of danger to our investigation. The list of potential suspects grew, each one with a motive tied to greed, power, or revenge. We also discovered that Dupont had been blackmailing several prominent figures, using their darkest secrets to maintain his hold over them. Among these was a letter from Celeste, begging for mercy and pleading for him to stop. It was clear that Dupont had been exploiting her vulnerabilities, but we still didn't know if she had the strength or the means to kill him. Our investigation eventually led us to Dupont's mansion once more. The police had sealed off the crime scene, but Elliot and I were granted access to search for any overlooked clues. The mansion, now devoid of the laughter and music that had filled its halls, felt eerie and foreboding. We started in the ballroom, our footsteps echoing in the vast, empty space. The crystal chandeliers that had once cast a warm glow now seemed cold and lifeless. As we moved through the mansion, we meticulously examined every room, every corner, searching for anything that might point us in the right direction. It was in Dupont's study that we found our first breakthrough. Hidden behind a bookshelf was a small door that led to a hidden room. The room was filled with files and documents, each one detailing Dupont's illicit activities. There were records of bribes, blackmail, and secret deals, evidence that painted a damning picture of a man who had lived his life in the shadows. Elliot carefully examined the documents, his expression grave. "This is what we've been looking for, Miguel." Dupont's entire empire laid bare. He was involved in things far worse than we imagined. As we continued to sift through the files, we found a ledger that detailed payments made to various individuals. Among the names listed was Celeste. It appeared that Dupont had been paying her large sums of money, but the reason for these payments remained unclear. "We need to talk to Celeste again," I said, my mind racing. "There's more to her story than she's letting on." Before we could follow up on this lead, we were interrupted by a commotion outside the mansion. One of the officers rushed in, his face pale and eyes wide with urgency. "Detective Brooks, Mr. Vasquez, you need to come with me. We found something." We followed the officer to the garden, where a small group had gathered around a shallow grave that had been unearthed. Inside the grave was a wooden box, its lid pried open to reveal a collection of old photographs and letters. The items inside were worn and yellowed with age, but they held a clue that would propel our investigation forward. Elliot carefully lifted one of the photographs, his eyes narrowing as he studied it. "This is Dupont, and that's Celeste. They knew each other long before the masquerade." The letters, written in a delicate hand, told the story of a young woman who had fallen in love with Dupont, only to have her heart shattered when he abandoned her. The pain of betrayal had festered over the years, turning into a desire for revenge. "These letters, they're from Celeste," I said, the pieces of the puzzle starting to come together. "She was in love with Dupont, and he used her, just like he did with so many others." Elliot nodded, his expression grim. "We need to bring her in for questioning. There's more to this than we realized." We returned to the precinct, where Celeste was waiting, her face pale and her eyes filled with fear. As we began our questioning, the truth slowly emerged. Dupont had indeed used and manipulated her, but it wasn't just for his own gain. He had also threatened her, using her past mistakes against her to keep her under his control. "I didn't kill him," Celeste insisted, tears streaming down her face. "I wanted to stop him, but I couldn't do it. I was too afraid." Elliot leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Celeste, we need you to be honest with us. Who else had a reason to want Dupont dead?" She hesitated, her gaze flickering to the door as if expecting someone to burst in at any moment. Finally, she spoke. "There were others. People he had blackmailed, people who hated him. Jonathan Pierce, Claire Morgan, they all had their reasons. But there was one person who hated him more than anyone else." We waited, the room silent except for the sound of Celeste's ragged breathing. "Detective Marshall," she whispered. "He and Dupont had a history. Dupont ruined his career, his reputation. Marshall swore he'd get revenge. The revelation hit us like a thunderbolt. Detective Marshall, the man who had seemed so determined to find Dupont's killer, had his own motives for wanting him dead. It was a twist we hadn't seen coming, but it fit with the evidence we had uncovered. With this new information, Elliot and I knew we had to tread carefully. Confronting Marshall directly could be dangerous, but we needed to gather more evidence before making any moves. The stakes were higher than ever, and the truth was more elusive than we had imagined. The investigation had taken a dark turn, and we were now navigating a treacherous landscape filled with deception and betrayal. But we were determined to see it through to the end, no matter the cost. The masquerade had been unmasked, revealing the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. As we prepared for the next phase of our investigation, I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, but at what cost? Only time would tell. The events of the previous night had set us on a path filled with uncertainty and danger. But with each new revelation, we moved closer to uncovering the truth behind John Dupont's murder. The masquerade had begun, and the dance between light and shadow was far from over. The revelation that Detective Marshall might be involved in John Dupont's murder lingered in my mind like a dark cloud. The information Celeste had given us was troubling, to say the least. If true, it meant that someone we had considered an ally was in fact a dangerous adversary. Elliot and I knew we had to tread carefully, navigating a treacherous path filled with deception and betrayal. As we delved deeper into the investigation, our focus shifted to uncovering the truth about Marshall's connection to Dupont. We needed solid evidence to support Celeste's claims and to bring the truth to light. Our first step was to dig into Marshall's past, to unearth any skeletons that might be hiding in his closet. Elliot and I began our search at the New Orleans Police Department, where we hoped to find records and files that would shed light on Marshall's history. The precinct was a hive of activity, officers bustling about with purpose. We were granted access to the archives, a dimly lit room filled with shelves of old files and documents. The air was thick with dust, the scent of aged paper and ink filling our nostrils. "Let's start with Marshall's personnel file," Elliot suggested, his tone focused and determined. We combed through the records, sifting through pages of reports, commendations, and disciplinary actions. Marshall's career was a tapestry of successes and setbacks, marked by moments of brilliance and shadows of controversy. It was in these shadows that we found our first clue. A series of incidents from a decade ago caught our attention. Marshall had been involved in a high-profile case, one that had ended in scandal. The case centered around a prominent businessman who had been accused of embezzlement and fraud. The businessman, it turned out, was none other than John Dupont. The charges had been dropped under mysterious circumstances, and Marshall had been quietly reassigned to a different precinct. "This is it," Elliot said, his eyes narrowing as he read the reports. Dupont ruined Marshall's career. He had the charges dropped, but the damage to Marshall's reputation was done. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together. Dupont had wielded his influence to escape justice, and Marshall had been left to pick up the pieces of his shattered career. The motive for revenge was clear, but we still needed more evidence to link Marshall directly to the murder. Our next step was to speak with people who had known Marshall during that time. We tracked down former colleagues and acquaintances, each conversation revealing a bit more about the man behind the badge. Most spoke of Marshall with a mix of respect and wariness, hinting at a temper that could flare under pressure. One former colleague, a retired officer named Henderson, provided valuable insight. Marshall was a good cop, but he changed after that case with Dupont. He became more guarded, more focused on getting results, no matter the cost. It was like he had a score to settle. As we pieced together Marshall's history, we also continued to investigate Dupont's life. The hidden room in the mansion had provided a wealth of information, and we spent hours poring over the documents. The evidence of Dupont's illicit activities was damning, but it also pointed to a larger network of corruption and crime. Among the documents, we found records of payments and transactions that led us to a series of offshore accounts. Dupont had been funneling money to these accounts for years, laundering his ill-gotten gains and hiding his wealth from prying eyes. The trail of money was complex, but it provided us with a crucial lead. Elliot and I decided to follow the money trail, hoping it would lead us to more answers. We enlisted the help of a forensic accountant, a meticulous woman named Evelyn, whose expertise in financial matters was unmatched. With her assistance, we traced the funds through a labyrinth of transactions, each step bringing us closer to the truth. "This is interesting," Evelyn said, pointing to a series of transfers that had occurred shortly before Dupont's death. These payments were made to an account under the name of Claire Morgan. She was one of the suspects we interviewed, wasn't she? Indeed, Claire Morgan had been on our radar from the beginning. A former lover of Dupont's, she had plenty of reasons to hate him. We decided it was time to pay her another visit. We found Claire at her elegant townhouse, a place that exuded an air of sophistication and old money. She greeted us with a polite smile, but there was a tension in her eyes that she couldn't quite hide. "Detectives, to what do I owe the pleasure?" she asked, her tone measured and calm. Elliot didn't waste any time. We've been tracing Dupont's financial dealings, and your name came up. Care to explain why he was transferring large sums of money to you? Claire's composure faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained it. John and I had a complicated relationship. The money was compensation for services rendered. Services? I inquired, raising an eyebrow. She hesitated, clearly weighing her options. John had a way of getting what he wanted. He knew how to manipulate people, how to exploit their weaknesses. I was no exception. Her admission didn't surprise us, but it left us with more questions than answers. What kind of services had she provided, and why had Dupont deemed them worth such a significant sum of money? We needed more information, and it was clear that Claire wasn't going to give it up easily. Claire, we need you to be honest with us, Elliot said, his voice firm. This isn't just about you. It's about finding justice for Dupont and stopping whoever is responsible for his murder. She sighed, her shoulders slumping in defeat. Fine. John paid me to gather information on his rivals, to find their weaknesses and report back to him. It was all part of his plan to maintain control and power. But I swear, I had nothing to do with his death. Her confession added another layer to the intricate web of deceit surrounding Dupont's life. He had used people like Claire to further his own ends, manipulating and exploiting them to maintain his grip on power. But Claire's involvement in his schemes didn't necessarily make her a killer. With Claire's information in hand, we turned our attention back to Detective Marshall. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, but we needed one final push to uncover the truth. We decided to set a trap, hoping to catch Marshall off guard and force him to reveal his true intentions. We arranged a meeting with Marshall at a secluded location, using the pretense of sharing new evidence in the case. The location was an abandoned warehouse, a place that would allow us to confront him without drawing unwanted attention. As we waited for Marshall to arrive, the tension in the air was palpable. Elliot and I positioned ourselves strategically, ready for whatever might happen. When Marshall finally arrived, he seemed calm and collected, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "What's this all about, Brooks?" Marshall asked, his tone wary. "We've made some progress in the investigation," Elliot replied. "We wanted to share our findings with you." Marshall's eyes narrowed. "I'm listening." Elliot began to outline the evidence we had gathered, carefully leading Marshall down the path we had set. As he spoke, I watched Marshall closely, noting every change in his expression, every flicker of emotion that crossed his face. Finally, Elliot reached the critical point. "We've uncovered a connection between Dupont and a series of offshore accounts. The payments were traced to several individuals, including Celeste and Claire Morgan. But there's one more name on the list, yours, Marshall." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and charged with tension. Marshall's face hardened, his eyes narrowing to slits. "You're making a mistake, Brooks." "Am I?" Elliot challenged, his voice unwavering. "The evidence points to you. You had motive, means, and opportunity. Dupont ruined your career, and you wanted revenge." Marshall's composure cracked, anger flashing in his eyes. "You don't know what you're talking about. Dupont was a monster. He deserved what he got." The admission, though indirect, was enough. Elliot and I moved to apprehend Marshall, but he was quicker than we anticipated. With a swift motion, he pulled a gun from his coat and aimed it at us. "Stay back," he barked, his voice filled with desperation. Elliot raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Marshall, think about what you're doing. This isn't the way to handle this." But Marshall was beyond reason. His eyes were wild, filled with a mix of anger and fear. "You don't understand. Dupont destroyed me. He destroyed everything I worked for. I had no choice. The situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. I knew we needed to de-escalate it before it turned deadly." "Marshall, listen to me," I said, my voice calm and steady. "We can help you. Just put the gun down and let's talk this through." For a moment, it seemed like Marshall might relent. His grip on the gun wavered, and a flicker of doubt crossed his face. But then, with a determined glint in his eyes, he made his decision. "No," he said, his voice resolute. It's too late for that. Before we could react, Marshall turned the gun on himself and pulled the trigger. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the warehouse, a stark reminder of the violence that had consumed him. Marshall's body crumpled to the ground, lifeless and still. Elliot and I stood in stunned silence, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Marshall's final act had left us with more questions than answers, but it also confirmed what we had feared. He had been driven to desperation by the weight of his past and his thirst for revenge against Dupont. As we processed the scene and called in the authorities, our thoughts turned to the unfinished business at hand. The web of corruption and deceit that surrounded Dupont's life was far-reaching, and we needed to ensure that justice was served for all involved. Back at the precinct, we reviewed the evidence once more, piecing together the final fragments of the puzzle. The offshore accounts, the blackmail, the manipulation. Each element painted a picture of a man who had thrived on power and control, using those around him as pawns in his grand scheme. Evelyn, our forensic accountant, provided us with a final report on the financial trail we had uncovered. The funds in the offshore accounts have been traced to several high-profile figures. Dupont's reach extended far beyond what we initially thought. Elliot nodded, his expression thoughtful. Dupont's death has exposed a network of corruption that spans across multiple industries and individuals. We need to ensure that this information is used to bring about real change. With our findings in hand, we presented the evidence to the district attorney. The case against Dupont's associates was strong, and we were confident that it would lead to a series of indictments and arrests. The dark legacy of John Dupont was finally coming to light, and the consequences of his actions would be felt for years to come. As the dust began to settle, Elliot and I took a moment to reflect on the journey we had undertaken. The masquerade that had promised enchantment and mystery had instead revealed a world of darkness and deceit. But through it all, we had remained steadfast in our pursuit of the truth, determined to see justice served. In the weeks that followed, the city of New Orleans began to heal from the wounds inflicted by Dupont's machinations. The community came together, united in the desire to rebuild and move forward. The trials of those involved in Dupont's schemes would serve as a reminder of the importance of integrity and accountability. For Elliot and me, the experience had been a profound one. We had faced danger and uncertainty, uncovering secrets that had been hidden for far too long. But through it all, our friendship had remained strong, a testament to the bond we shared. As we stood on the balcony of my apartment one evening, overlooking the vibrant city below, I turned to Elliot. You know, despite everything, I'm glad we took that invitation. It led us to the truth. Elliot smiled, his eyes reflecting the city lights. Indeed, the masquerade may have been a facade, but it also brought us closer to understanding the complexities of human nature. And for that, I'm grateful. The investigation had taken a dark and unexpected turn with the death of Detective Marshall, but Elliot and I remained resolute in our pursuit of the truth. We knew that the answers we sought were buried deep within the tangled web of John Dupont's life. It was a daunting task, but one that we were determined to see through to the end. As we delved deeper into Dupont's past, we uncovered a series of events that painted a complex picture of a man driven by ambition and a thirst for power. The documents and evidence we had collected provided a glimpse into the shadowy world in which Dupont had operated, a world where manipulation and deceit were the currency of the realm. One of the key figures in Dupont's life was Jonathan Pierce, a rival businessman whose name had surfaced multiple times during our investigation. Pierce had a reputation for being ruthless and cunning, traits that had earned him both respect and fear in the business community. It was clear that he and Dupont had a tumultuous history, one that was marked by betrayal and a fierce competition for dominance. Elliot and I decided it was time to confront Pierce directly. We arranged a meeting at his lavish penthouse, a place that exuded an air of opulence and power. As we arrived, we were greeted by a doorman who escorted us to the elevator. The ride to the top floor was silent, the tension between us palpable. When the elevator doors opened, we were met by Pierce himself, a tall man with sharp features and an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. He welcomed us with a polite smile, but there was a coldness in his eyes that put me on edge. "Detectives, to what do I owe the pleasure?" Pierce asked, his tone smooth and controlled. Elliot didn't waste any time. We're here to discuss John Dupont. Your name has come up several times in our investigation. We'd like to ask you a few questions. Pierce's smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. Dupont, a man of many talents and even more secrets. What exactly do you want to know? We're interested in your relationship with Dupont, I said, stepping forward. From what we've gathered, the two of you had a complicated history. Care to elaborate? Pierce sighed, his gaze distant as he recalled the past. John and I were business rivals. We competed for the same deals, the same clients. It was a fierce competition, but one that I respected. John had a way of getting under your skin, of making you question your own abilities. But that's what made him so formidable. Did you ever have any personal dealings with Dupont outside of business? Elliot inquired, his eyes never leaving Pierce's face. There were times when our paths crossed in more personal matters, Pierce admitted. He had a knack for finding out people's secrets and using them to his advantage. He knew things about me that I would have preferred to keep hidden, such as, I pressed, sensing that we were getting closer to the truth. Pierce hesitated, his jaw tightening. There were rumors, whispers of impropriety. John used those rumors to manipulate me, to keep me in check. He was a master at the art of deception. The more Pierce spoke, the clearer it became that he had harbored a deep-seated resentment towards Dupont. But was that enough to drive him to murder? We needed more evidence to support our suspicions. As we continued our questioning, Pierce revealed that Dupont had been involved in a series of illegal activities, from money laundering to blackmail. It was information that we had already suspected, but hearing it from someone who had been directly involved with Dupont added weight to our findings. John had a network of contacts, people who would do his bidding without question, Pierce said. He was careful, meticulous, but even the most careful people make mistakes. And what about Celeste? Elliot asked, changing the subject. What can you tell us about her relationship with Dupont? Pierce's expression darkened at the mention of Celeste. Celeste was one of John's pawns. He used her, manipulated her. She was desperate, vulnerable. John exploited those weaknesses to keep her under his control. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together. Dupont's manipulative tactics had created a web of deceit that ensnared everyone around him. But there was still one more person we needed to speak with, Claire Morgan. Our previous interview with Claire had revealed that she had been one of Dupont's informants, gathering information on his rivals in exchange for money. It was a dangerous game, one that had put her at risk. We decided to visit her again, hoping to uncover more details about her involvement with Dupont. We found Claire at her townhouse, looking as elegant as ever. She greeted us with a wary smile, her eyes betraying a hint of apprehension. "Detectives, back so soon?" she asked, her tone light but guarded. "We have a few more questions," Elliot said, his voice calm and reassuring. "We've learned a lot about Dupont's operations, but there are still some gaps we need to fill in." Claire's shoulders sagged slightly, as if the weight of the secrets she carried was becoming too much to bear. "What do you want to know?" "We understand that you provided Dupont with information about his rivals," I began, "but we need to know more about your relationship with him. How did you get involved in all of this?" Claire sighed, her gaze distant as she recalled the past. "It started innocently enough. John was charming, persuasive. He made me feel special, like I was the only one who mattered. But it didn't take long for me to realize that he was using me." "Using you how?" Elliot prompted. "He would ask me to attend social events, to gather information on certain individuals. At first, it seemed harmless, but then he started asking for more. He wanted me to dig deeper, to find out people's secrets. It became a game, one that I couldn't escape from." "Did you ever suspect that Dupont was involved in illegal activities?" I asked. Claire nodded slowly. "I had my suspicions, but I was too afraid to confront him. He had a way of making you feel powerless, like there was no way out." The more Claire spoke, the more we realized the extent of Dupont's control over those around him. He had used manipulation and fear to maintain his power, creating a network of people who were too afraid to stand up to him. But now that he was gone, the truth was finally coming to light. As we wrapped up our interview with Claire, she made a surprising admission. "There's something else you should know. John kept a journal, a record of all his dealings. It's hidden in the mansion, in a secret compartment in his study. This revelation was a game changer. If we could find Dupont's journal, it would provide us with invaluable evidence to piece together the full extent of his operations." We thanked Claire for her cooperation and made our way back to the Dupont mansion, our minds racing with anticipation. The mansion, now a crime scene, was quiet and empty. The opulence that had once filled its halls felt hollow in the absence of its master. We made our way to Dupont's study, the place where we had discovered the hidden room filled with documents. This time, we were looking for something even more crucial. We searched the study meticulously, examining every corner, every piece of furniture. It was Elliot who finally found the hidden compartment, concealed behind a false panel in the wall. Inside, we discovered a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with Dupont's meticulous handwriting. Elliot carefully opened the journal, his eyes scanning the entries. "This is it, Miguel. This is the key to understanding everything." The journal detailed Dupont's dealings, from his legitimate business ventures to his illicit activities. It listed names, dates, and transactions, providing a comprehensive record of his manipulations and schemes. It was a treasure trove of information, one that would prove invaluable in our quest for justice. As we read through the journal, we uncovered more evidence of Dupont's connections to powerful figures, including politicians, business leaders, and law enforcement officials. It became clear that his influence had reached far and wide, and that his downfall would have far-reaching consequences. One entry in particular caught our attention. It detailed a meeting between Dupont and Detective Marshall, in which Dupont had blackmailed Marshall into doing his bidding. The evidence was damning, providing a clear motive for Marshall's actions. It was the final piece of the puzzle, confirming what we had suspected all along. With the journal in hand, we returned to the precinct to present our findings to the district attorney. The evidence was overwhelming, and we were confident that it would lead to a series of indictments and arrests. The truth about John Dupont's empire was finally coming to light, and justice would be served for all those who had suffered under his reign. As the case moved forward, Elliot and I reflected on the journey we had undertaken. The investigation had been filled with twists and turns, each revelation bringing us closer to the truth. We had uncovered a world of darkness and deceit, but we had also found moments of hope and resilience. The shadows of the past had been illuminated, revealing the true extent of Dupont's machinations. But through it all, we had remained steadfast in our pursuit of justice, determined to see the truth come to light. The dance between light and shadow was far from over, but we were ready to face whatever came our way, side by side. The journey to uncover the truth about John Dupont and the extent of his criminal empire had brought us face to face with the darkest aspects of human nature. It had tested our resolve, our courage, and our friendship. But in the end, it had also strengthened our commitment to seeking justice and uncovering the truth, no matter how difficult the path might be. As we stood on the steps of the courthouse, watching as the first of Dupont's associates were led away in handcuffs, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. The masquerade that had once seemed so enchanting had revealed its true face, and the darkness that had lurked beneath the surface had been exposed to the light. Elliot turned to me, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. "We did it, Miguel. We brought the truth to light." I nodded, the weight of the journey lifting from my shoulders. "Yes, we did. But there will always be more mysteries to uncover, more truths to seek." He smiled, a glint of determination in his eyes. "And we'll face them together, just as we always have." The city of New Orleans continued to bustle with life, its streets filled with the sounds of laughter, music, and the hum of daily activity. It was a city that had seen its share of darkness, but also one that had a remarkable capacity for resilience and renewal. As Elliot and I walked away from the courthouse, I knew that we were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The masquerade was over, but the journey continued. And with each step we took, We remained steadfast in our commitment to seeking the truth, bringing justice to those who needed it most, and facing the shadows of the past with courage and determination. With the shadows of the past revealed, Elliot and I knew that the truth was only partially uncovered. The Dupont case had opened a Pandora's box, and the dark secrets that spilled out demanded our full attention. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but we were prepared to navigate it with unwavering determination. Our focus now shifted to the remaining players in Dupont's network. The journal had provided us with a wealth of information, and we meticulously worked through each entry, identifying individuals who had played a role in Dupont's schemes. One name that stood out was Richard Carlyle, a high-powered attorney who had often represented Dupont in legal matters. Carlyle was known for his sharp mind and ruthless tactics, qualities that had made him a formidable presence in the courtroom. He had built a reputation as a lawyer who could make problems disappear, often bending the law to suit his clients' needs. It was clear that he had been an integral part of Dupont's operations, and we needed to understand the extent of his involvement. We arranged a meeting with Carlyle at his office, a sleek and modern space that exuded professionalism and power. As we entered, the receptionist directed us to a conference room, where Carlyle was waiting, his demeanor composed and confident. "Detectives, I understand you have some questions for me," Carlyle said, his tone smooth and controlled. "That's correct," Elliot replied, taking a seat across from him. "We've been investigating John Dupont's activities, and your name has come up multiple times. We'd like to know more about your relationship with him." Carlyle's expression remained neutral as he leaned back in his chair. "John Dupont was a client of mine. I provided him with legal counsel, as I do for many high-profile individuals. My involvement with him was strictly professional. Professional or not, your name appears in connection with several of his more questionable activities," I interjected. "We have reason to believe that you played a significant role in helping him navigate his illegal dealings." Carlyle's eyes narrowed slightly, but he maintained his composure. "I assure you, detectives, my work with Dupont was always within the bounds of the law. If he was involved in anything illicit, I was not aware of it." Elliot studied Carlyle carefully, noting the slight tension in his posture. "We have evidence that suggests otherwise. Dupont's journal contains detailed records of payments made to you for services that go beyond legal counsel." For a moment, Carlyle's facade cracked, and a flicker of unease crossed his face. But he quickly regained his composure, a confident smile playing on his lips. "I see. Well, I'm sure you understand the concept of attorney-client privilege. I can't divulge specific details of my work with Dupont." Elliot nodded, his expression thoughtful. "We understand that, but we're not here to discuss privileged information. We're here to get to the bottom of Dupont's criminal activities, and your cooperation could be invaluable." Carlyle sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. "I suppose there's no harm in providing some context. John Dupont was a man who operated in the gray areas of the law. He had a knack for finding loopholes and exploiting them to his advantage. My job was to ensure that he stayed within the legal boundaries, but I can't deny that some of his actions raised ethical concerns." "Did you ever confront him about those concerns?" I asked. Carlyle hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I did on occasion, but John was a master manipulator. He had a way of making you see things from his perspective, of convincing you that what he was doing was justified. It was a delicate balance, and I did my best to navigate it." As we continued our questioning, it became clear that Carlyle had been complicit in many of Dupont's schemes, even if he had tried to maintain a veneer of legality. He provided us with valuable insights into Dupont's methods, shedding light on how he had managed to evade the law for so long. With Carlyle's information in hand, we returned to the precinct to strategize our next moves. The evidence against Dupont's associates was mounting, and we needed to ensure that every piece of the puzzle was accounted for. One name that had been conspicuously absent from our investigation thus far was Franklin Drake, a powerful politician with close ties to Dupont. Drake had been a staunch supporter of Dupont's business ventures, and there were rumors that he had benefited greatly from their association. We decided to dig deeper into Drake's background, hoping to uncover any connections that might link him to Dupont's criminal activities. Our research led us to a series of campaign contributions and financial transactions that raised red flags. It appeared that Dupont had funneled money into Drake's campaigns, ensuring his continued support and influence. To get a clearer picture, we reached out to a contact within the political sphere, a journalist named Rebecca Lawson. Rebecca had a reputation for her investigative prowess and her willingness to take on powerful figures. She agreed to meet with us at a local cafe, eager to share what she knew. Rebecca greeted us with a warm smile, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Detectives, it's a pleasure to meet you. I've been following the Dupont case closely. What can I do to help?" "We're looking into Franklin Drake's connections to Dupont," Elliot explained. "We have reason to believe that Drake played a significant role in supporting Dupont's ventures. Anything you can tell us would be invaluable." Rebecca's expression turned serious as she leaned in, her voice lowering. "Drake is a slippery one. He's managed to keep his hands clean, at least publicly. But I've been digging into his financial records, and there are some troubling patterns. Dupont's money has been flowing into Drake's campaigns for years, often through shell companies and offshore accounts. Do you have any concrete evidence?" I asked, my interest piqued. Rebecca nodded, pulling out a folder filled with documents. "I've managed to trace several transactions that link Dupont's funds to Drake's campaign accounts. It's not enough to prove anything definitively, but it's a start." We reviewed the documents carefully, noting the complex web of financial transactions that connected Dupont and Drake. It was clear that Drake had been benefiting from Dupont's support, but we needed more evidence to build a solid case against him. As we prepared to leave, Rebecca offered us one final piece of advice. "Be careful, detectives. Drake has powerful friends, and he's not above using them to protect himself. If you go after him, you'll need to be prepared for a fight." With Rebecca's warning in mind, we returned to the precinct to plan our next moves. The investigation was reaching a critical juncture, and we needed to ensure that every angle was covered. Our pursuit of justice had uncovered a network of corruption that extended far beyond Dupont, and we were determined to see it through to the end. The path ahead was uncertain, but Elliot and I were resolute in our commitment to the truth. The hidden agenda that had driven Dupont's empire was finally coming to light, and we were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, we would continue to unravel the intricate web of deceit, bringing justice to those who had suffered under its shadow. As we stood on the balcony of my apartment, the city lights twinkling below, I turned to Elliot. "We've come a long way, Elliot, but there's still so much to uncover." He nodded, a determined glint in his eyes. "Indeed, the journey is far from over, but we'll face it together, just as we always have." We clinked our glasses in a silent toast to the challenges that lay ahead, knowing that the dance between light and shadow was far from over. The hidden agenda had been revealed, but there were still secrets waiting to be uncovered, and we were ready to face them head-on. The case against John Dupont's associates had reached a critical juncture, and the stakes had never been higher. The web of corruption and deceit that had ensnared so many individuals was slowly unraveling, and Elliot and I were determined to see justice served. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but we were resolute in our pursuit of the truth. Our investigation into Franklin Drake's connections to Dupont had yielded promising leads, but we needed concrete evidence to build a solid case against him. Rebecca Lawson's insights had provided us with a roadmap, and we set out to trace the financial transactions that linked Dupont's funds to Drake's campaign accounts. As we meticulously combed through the documents, we uncovered a series of shell companies and offshore accounts that had been used to launder money and funnel it into Drake's campaigns. The transactions were complex, designed to obscure the true source of the funds, but with Evelyn's expertise, we were able to piece together the puzzle. "This is it," Evelyn said, pointing to a series of transactions that formed a clear pattern. These funds originated from Dupont's accounts and were funneled through several intermediaries before ending up in Drake's campaign coffers. Elliot and I shared a look of determination. "We need to confront Drake with this evidence," Elliot said. "It's time to see how he reacts when faced with the truth." We arranged a meeting with Drake at his office, a stately building that exuded power and authority. As we entered, We were met by a stern receptionist who directed us to a conference room. Drake was already there, his demeanor calm and composed, but there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. "Detectives, what can I do for you today?" Drake asked, his tone polite but guarded. "We're here to discuss your connections to John Dupont," I said, taking a seat across from him. "Specifically, the financial transactions that link Dupont's funds to your campaign accounts." Drake's expression tightened, but he maintained his composure. "I'm not sure what you're implying, but I assure you, my campaign finances are above board." "We have evidence that suggests otherwise," Elliot interjected, placing the documents on the table. "These transactions show a clear pattern of money laundering and financial manipulation, all originating from Dupont's accounts." For a moment, Drake's facade cracked, and a flicker of panic crossed his face. But he quickly regained his composure, a confident smile playing on his lips. "This is preposterous. Dupont was a supporter of my campaign, yes, but any financial contributions were made legally and transparently. These transactions tell a different story," I pressed. "Dupont used shell companies and offshore accounts to funnel money into your campaigns, obscuring the true source of the funds. You benefited greatly from his support, and now it's time to answer for it." Drake's eyes narrowed, his voice taking on a steely edge. "You have no proof. These documents are circumstantial at best." Elliot leaned in, his voice calm and unwavering. "We have more than enough evidence to build a case against you, Drake. The question is, how do you want to handle this? Cooperate with us, and it might go easier for you." Drake's composure finally broke, and he let out a resigned sigh. "Fine. What do you want to know?" As we questioned Drake, he revealed the extent of his dealings with Dupont. It became clear that Dupont had leveraged his financial support to gain political influence, ensuring that his business ventures were protected and his interests advanced. Drake's cooperation provided us with valuable insights, but it also exposed the depth of the corruption that had infiltrated the political system. With Drake's confession in hand, we knew that the case against Dupont's associates was reaching its climax. The evidence we had gathered was overwhelming, and it was time to bring the truth to light. We prepared to present our findings to the district attorney, confident that justice would be served. The courtroom was packed with spectators and reporters, all eager to witness the culmination of the high-profile case. As we took our seats, the air was thick with anticipation. The trial of Dupont's associates was about to begin, and the outcome would have far-reaching consequences. One by one, the witnesses took the stand, recounting their experiences and revealing the extent of Dupont's manipulations. The evidence we had collected was presented in meticulous detail, painting a damning picture of a man who had built an empire on deceit and corruption. Elliot and I watched as the prosecution laid out its case, confident in the strength of the evidence. The defense attempted to discredit the witnesses and challenge the validity of the documents, but the truth was undeniable. The weight of the evidence was overwhelming, and it became clear that justice would prevail. As the trial drew to a close, the jury deliberated, and the room fell into a tense silence. The minutes felt like hours as we awaited the verdict. Finally, the jury returned, and the foreman stood to deliver the decision. "We, the jury, find the defendants guilty on all charges." The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and triumph. The verdict was a resounding affirmation of the work we had done, a testament to our commitment to uncovering the truth and seeking justice. The shadow of John Dupont's empire had been lifted, and the city of New Orleans could begin to heal. After the trial, Elliot and I stood outside the courthouse, the weight of the journey lifting from our shoulders. The city around us buzzed with life, a testament to its resilience and strength. "We did it, Elliot," I said, a sense of closure washing over me. "We brought the truth to light." He nodded, a satisfied smile on his face. "Indeed, but our work is never truly done. There will always be new mysteries to uncover, new challenges to face.